Good evening. Tonight's tale is, I assure you, entirely fictional. There are no household pets plotting against their masters, no cattle with homicidal tendencies, and certainly no birds gathering in ominous numbers above your local park. The broadcasts you are about to hear are not actual emergency transmissions, nor the final desperate words of civilization's collapse. They have been crafted by artificial intelligence. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or recently trampled, is purely coincidental. I do hope you've secured your pets for the evening, checked that your doors are properly latched, and perhaps glanced once or twice at that faithful dog sleeping peacefully by the fire. Enjoy the show.
Good evening, I'm Melanie Daniels with Channel 7 News. Tonight we begin with an unusual collection of reports from across the region that authorities say are likely unrelated but have caught the attention of local animal control services. Over the past week, we've received multiple calls about what residents are describing as unusual animal behavior in various neighborhoods in rural areas. While officials maintain these are isolated incidents, the frequency of reports has prompted the city to issue general safety reminders about wildlife encounters. We go now to Rod Taylor, who has been following these developing stories.
Thanks, Melanie. I'm here at Riverside Park, where maintenance crews have been dealing with what they're calling an unprecedented cleanup situation over the past several days. Park supervisors report finding unusual amounts of debris scattered across walking paths, picnic areas damaged in ways that don't match typical vandalism patterns, and what appears to be evidence of increased wildlife activity in areas where animals typically avoid human contact. The jogging path near the duck pond has been temporarily closed after maintenance crews discovered extensive damage to benches and signage that officials say appears to be animal-related.
Rod, what are officials saying about the cause of this damage?
Park management tells me they're working with animal control to determine what type of animals might be responsible, but the damage patterns are unlike anything they've seen before. Picnic tables have been overturned, trash containers completely destroyed, and there are animal tracks throughout areas where wildlife normally avoids human activity. They're recommending that park visitors remain on designated paths and avoid the pond area until further notice.
We're also hearing reports of unusual animal behavior in residential areas. Animal control has responded to a significant increase in calls this week from pet owners reporting what they describe as personality changes in their animals. The reports include pets becoming less responsive to their families, showing increased independence, and in some cases appearing less interested in normal activities like walks or feeding routines. Officials stress that these behavioral changes appear to be minor and may be related to seasonal environmental factors.
That's right, Melanie. I spoke with several veterinary offices today, and they confirmed they're seeing an uptick in calls from concerned pet owners. However, medical examinations haven't revealed any signs of illness or injury in the animals. The consensus among local veterinarians is that these may be normal stress responses to changes in weather patterns or other environmental factors. They're advising pet owners to monitor their animals, but not to panic over minor behavioral adjustments. Back to you, Melanie.
Thank you, Rod. The State Department of Natural Resources issued a statement this afternoon reminding residents that spring weather patterns can affect wildlife movement and feeding behaviors. They recommend avoiding direct contact with wild animals, securing garbage containers, and keeping pets supervised during outdoor activities. Department officials say the combination of unusual weather patterns and normal seasonal changes may be contributing to increased wildlife activity in suburban areas. Rod, what's the latest from animal control?
Animal control reports they've responded to an unusually high number of calls about wildlife sightings in suburban areas during daylight hours. While this is uncommon, officials say it's not unprecedented during seasonal transitions. Most calls involve deer, raccoons, and other common wildlife appearing in neighborhoods where they're not typically seen. Residents are being advised to give these animals plenty of space and contact authorities rather than attempting to handle encounters themselves. Back to you, Melanie.
Thank you, Rod. Now let's check in with meteorologist Ellen Brody for this weekend's forecast. Ellen, could these unusual weather patterns be contributing to the wildlife behavior we're seeing?
Thanks, Melanie. We have been seeing some atypical weather patterns this winter that could certainly affect animal behavior. Temperatures have been running about 10 degrees above normal for this time of year, and we've had significantly less rainfall than usual. These conditions can disrupt normal feeding patterns and habitat use for many species. This weekend, we're looking at continued warm weather with highs in the mid-70s, partly cloudy skies, and a slight chance of scattered showers Sunday afternoon. The warm temperatures may continue to draw animals into areas where they're seeking water sources changes, so residents should be aware of increased wildlife activity, especially near ponds and streams. Back to you.
Thank you, Ellen. In other news tonight, the City Council will vote next week on proposed changes to downtown parking rules. The ordinances would extend meter hours until 8 p.m. on weekdays and add weekend parking fees in the Central Business District. We'll have full coverage of Tuesday's council meeting. Turning to sports, congratulations continue to pour in for the Buffalo Bills after their stunning 48-3 win over the Dallas Cowboys in last night's Super Bowl. The Bills dominated from start to finish, with quarterback Josh Allen throwing 4 touchdowns and the defense holding Dallas to just a single field goal. It's Buffalo's first Super Bowl title, ending one of the longest droughts in NFL history. Still ahead, your local high school sports roundup, plus a look at the community garden project that's turning an abandoned lot into green space. Stay with us. Good evening, I'm Melanie Daniels with Channel 7 News. Tonight we begin with several unusual incidents reported across the metropolitan area involving what authorities are calling aggressive animal behavior. 3 separate joggers were hospitalized this morning after being attacked by flocks of birds in Riverside Park, with witnesses describing the birds as unusually coordinated in their assault. Meanwhile, power crews are working overtime to restore electricity to nearly 4,000 homes after what utility officials say was an unprecedented number of squirrel-related outages. The rodents apparently chewed through power lines in a pattern that crews are calling systematic. We now go live to Rod Taylor at Riverside Park, where the first attack occurred.
Thanks, Melanie. I'm standing here at the north entrance of Riverside Park, where just 12 hours ago, Sarah Mitchell was enjoying her regular morning jog when she says the sky literally darkened above her. According to Mitchell, dozens of crows and starlings dove from the trees, clawing at her face and arms with what she described as deliberate precision. Park maintenance worker Frank Webb witnessed the entire incident from about 50 yards away. Frank, tell us what you saw.
I've been working these grounds for 15 years, and I ain't never seen nothing like it. Those birds, they wasn't just spooked or territorial. They was hunting her, like they had some kind of plan. First, the crows started calling from different trees, almost like they was talking to each other. Then they all hit her at once, from every direction. When I ran over with my leaf blower to scare them off, they didn't scatter like normal birds do. They regrouped in the trees and just watched us. Watched us like they was figuring out their next move.
Franklin says this wasn't an isolated incident. Park officials have received reports of similar bird behavior from at least 6 other locations across the city today. Meanwhile, animal control officers are struggling to explain why domestic cats in the West Side neighborhood have been bringing home unusual prey, including small electronics and jewelry. Back to you, Melanie.
Thank you, Rod. Joining us now is Dr. Matt Hooper, animal behaviorist from the University Research Center. Dr. Hooper, what could be causing this sudden shift in animal behavior patterns?
Well, Melanie, what we're seeing could be attributed to several environmental factors. Seasonal migration patterns have been disrupted by unseasonably warm weather, which can cause territorial disputes and increased aggression. We're also seeing higher than normal electromagnetic activity from solar flares, which can interfere with animal navigation systems. The squirrel incidents are particularly interesting because these animals are highly sensitive to changes in their food supply. With the recent construction in wooded areas, their normal foraging patterns have been disrupted. However, I will say that the coordinated nature of some of these incidents is unusual. We typically don't see this level of apparent organization in wild animal behavior. I'm planning to conduct field research this week to gather more data on behavioral patterns in affected areas.
Dr. Hooper, should residents be concerned about their safety?
At this point, I'd recommend normal precautions. Don't approach wild animals. Keep pet food stored indoors, and if you encounter aggressive wildlife, make noise and back away slowly. These incidents appear to be isolated cases of stressed animals adapting to environmental pressures. We're monitoring the situation closely, but there's no evidence of disease or coordinated threat to public safety.
City officials echo that assessment, stating that animal control units are investigating each incident and working with local wildlife experts to identify any patterns. The The mayor's office released a statement this evening assuring residents that there is no cause for alarm and that all city services remain fully operational. We'll continue following this developing story.
Folks, George Taylor here with another edition of Underground Truth. And tonight I'm coming to you with information that the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. While Channel 7 and the rest of the corporate propaganda machine are feeding you sanitized stories about stressed squirrels and migration disruption, I'm here to tell you what's really happening in our cities. This isn't random, this isn't environmental stress, and this sure as hell isn't natural behavior. What we're witnessing is the opening phase of a coordinated psychological operation designed to destabilize the population and pave the way for unprecedented government control. Think about it. People, when have you ever seen squirrels systematically target power infrastructure? When have you ever witnessed birds conducting what witnesses are describing as military-style formations against joggers? The answer is never, because this level of coordination doesn't happen naturally. We're looking at behavioral modification on a massive scale, and I've got documents that prove the government has been experimenting with electromagnetic frequency manipulation for decades. Project Bluebeam wasn't just about holographic displays in the sky, it was about neural frequency disruption across multiple species. They've been testing this technology in remote locations for years, perfecting the ability to override natural instincts and implant aggressive behavioral patterns. Now they're rolling it out in urban centers, starting with small incidents to gauge public reaction and refine their methods. The timing isn't coincidental either, folks. We're seeing these incidents emerge just as the administration is pushing through emergency powers legislation that's been sitting in committee for months. Legislation that would grant federal agencies unprecedented authority to declare martial law in response to biological threats and public safety emergencies. You think they're going to waste a crisis this perfect? They created the problem, and now they're going to offer the solution. And that solution is going to cost you every freedom you have left. Look at the pattern of reporting. The way they're framing this is environmental stress while completely ignoring the military precision of these attacks. They're conditioning you to accept that animals can suddenly develop tactical thinking and coordinated assault strategies overnight. It's psychological preparation for something much bigger, something that's going to require you to surrender your constitutional rights for the promise of protection from threats they've manufactured themselves. I've got sources inside the Department of Defense who are telling me about classified programs involving neurological frequency broadcasting, technology that can influence brain chemistry across multiple species simultaneously. This isn't science fiction. This is operational psychology, and they're beta testing it on your neighborhoods right now. Mark my words, within weeks we're going to see these incidents escalate dramatically, and when they do, remember who warned you first. Stock up on supplies, secure your homes, and whatever you do, don't trust the official explanations. The truth is out there, but you're not going to find it on the evening news.
Good evening, I'm Melanie Daniels. Tonight we lead with breaking developments in what authorities are now calling an animal behavior crisis. Over the past 24 hours, emergency rooms across 3 counties have treated more than 60 victims of domestic animal attacks. These aren't strays or wild animals, but family pets turning on their owners with unprecedented violence. The incidents began early this morning when Golden Retriever Max attacked the Morrison family during breakfast, sending 2 children and their mother to intensive care. Since then, similar reports have flooded 911 dispatch centers, with victims describing pets they've owned for years suddenly becoming predatory. Animal shelters report being overwhelmed as frightened families abandon pets, while others refuse to surrender animals they insist are still good dogs despite recent attacks. We go now to Rod Taylor at Memorial Hospital, where many victims are being treated.
Melanie, the emergency department behind me has seen more animal attack victims in the last 18 hours than they typically treat in 6 months. Dr. Patricia Hayes, head of emergency medicine, tells me the injuries are unlike anything she's encountered in 15 years of trauma work. The wounds show what she describes as calculated targeting of vulnerable areas. I spoke with attack victim Annie Hayworth, who barely survived an encounter with her own tabby cat. Annie, can you tell us what happened?
Whiskers had been my companion for 8 years. Sweet little thing, never even scratched the furniture. I was reading in bed when she jumped up like always, but instead of curling up, she went straight for my throat. Not playful, not scared, just pure killing instinct. She knew exactly where to bite to cause the most damage. My neighbor heard me screaming and broke down the door. Found Whiskers sitting calmly in the corner, licking blood off her paws like nothing happened. That wasn't my cat anymore. The sweetness was just gone.
Annie is one of the fortunate ones. 3 victims didn't survive their encounters with pets they'd raised from puppies or kittens. Animal Control Officer Caesar Stone has been responding to calls all day, and he says what he's seeing defies explanation. Back to you, Melanie.
Thank you, Rod. We're joined now by veterinary behaviorist Dr. Nova Hayes from the Regional Animal Medical Center. Dr. Hayes, in your professional opinion, what could cause such a dramatic behavioral shift in domesticated animals?
Melanie, I've been practicing veterinary medicine for 20 years, and I've never encountered anything like this. Typically, when we see aggression in domestic animals, there are clear triggers, warning signs, behavioral escalation patterns. What we're seeing now is instantaneous personality transformation with no apparent cause. No signs of rabies, no neurological abnormalities, no toxic exposure. Blood work comes back completely normal. These animals appear physically healthy in every measurable way, yet they're exhibiting predatory behavior toward humans they've bonded with for years. The targeting precision that victims describe suggests cognitive function is intact, but the emotional attachment and recognition systems seem to have been severed. It's as if someone flipped a switch in their brains, removing all learned domestication behaviors and reverting them to pure predatory instinct.
Dr. Hayes, should pet owners be concerned about their own animals?
I wish I could provide reassurance, but honestly, we don't understand what's triggering these episodes. Some animals that attacked yesterday are back to normal behavior today, while others remain aggressive. My recommendation is extreme caution around all pets until we can identify the cause. Don't leave children alone with animals. Watch for changes in behavior patterns, and if your pet shows any signs of unusual aggression, remove family members from the area immediately and contact animal control.
City shelters are reporting a crisis situation as hundreds of families have surrendered pets in the last 12 hours. Director Quint Harper states that facility capacity has been exceeded by 400%, and emergency housing is being established in unused warehouses. Harper warns that euthanasia may become necessary if the surrender rate continues. The mayor's office has declared a public health emergency and is coordinating with state agencies to provide additional resources. Federal epidemiologists are expected to arrive tomorrow to investigate possible environmental or biological causes. We'll continue monitoring this unprecedented situation. Stay with us for continuing coverage after these messages.
What's up, everybody? Deke Carter here with another episode of Real Talk. Today, we're diving deep into this animal situation that's got everyone freaked out, and I've got Dr. Matt Hooper with me, one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to animal behavior. Matt, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Deke. I've got to say, what we're witnessing right now is challenging everything we thought we understood about animal psychology and domestication.
Okay, so break this down for people who don't have PhDs, because the news is saying these pets are just snapping, but that sounds like bullshit to me. What's really happening here?
You're right to be skeptical. Domestication isn't just training. It's genetic modification that's taken thousands of years. We've literally bred the predatory instincts out of these animals and replaced them with dependency behaviors. For a golden retriever to suddenly target human throat arteries with surgical precision, that's not a behavioral regression. That's accessing behavioral patterns that shouldn't exist in their genetic memory. It's like a computer suddenly running programs it was never installed with.
Hold up. So you're talking about some kind of natural infection? Like a virus that's been sleeping in the ground or something?
I'm saying we need to consider biological mechanisms that we might not fully understand yet. Look, we know that certain naturally occurring pathogens can cross the blood-brain barrier and affect neurological function. We've seen fungal infections alter animal behavior patterns, viral encephalitis change personality in mammals, and parasitic infections create seemingly impossible behavioral modifications. What we're seeing could be a previously unknown pathogen, maybe something that's been dormant in the environment and recently activated by climate conditions or atmospheric changes. The precision suggests we're dealing with a biological agent that has evolved specifically to target mammalian social bonding mechanisms, possibly as part of a natural ecological rebalancing process we don't yet comprehend.
So we're talking about Mother Nature fighting back, not some government conspiracy.
Exactly. Think about permafrost melting, releasing ancient bacteria, or deep ocean warming, bringing up microorganisms that have been isolated for millennia. We're constantly discovering new species of bacteria and viruses that have capabilities we never imagined. There could be a naturally occurring pathogen that specifically targets the neurochemical pathways responsible for domestication and human-animal bonding. Evolution is incredibly sophisticated. And if this organism evolved in an environment where disrupting predator-prey relationships provided survival advantages, it could have developed extremely precise targeting mechanisms. The widespread distribution suggests something airborne, possibly released by changing weather patterns or geological activity we haven't connected yet.
But who would do this? And why? What's the end game of turning every family pet into a potential killer?
That's the terrifying question, isn't it? If this is intentional, we're looking at the most sophisticated biological warfare ever deployed. Think about the psychological impact of being betrayed by animals you've loved and trusted for years. Think about the social breakdown when families can't feel safe in their own homes. Think about the economic disruption when people are too afraid to go outside because they can't predict which animals might turn aggressive. It's a perfect destabilization strategy that doesn't require armies or bombs, just the corruption of the trust bonds that hold our civilization together.
This is heavy stuff, man. What do you think happens next?
If I'm right about this being a natural biological phenomenon, then we're looking at something that could escalate according to its own evolutionary logic rather than human timelines. We might see it spread to larger animals as the pathogen adapts and mutates, or find that it becomes more virulent with successive generations. The concerning part is that we're dealing with something that has potentially been perfecting these mechanisms for thousands or millions of years in isolation. Our domesticated animals are essentially naive to this pathogen with no evolutionary defenses. We need to start thinking about this as an ecological shift rather than a medical emergency, because the solutions are going to be completely different.
Dr. Matt Hooper, everybody, giving us the truth they don't want you to hear on the evening news. Matt, where can people follow your research on this?
I'll be publishing updates on my university website as we gather more data. But honestly, Deke, if this is a natural biological phenomenon, we might be looking at something that fundamentally changes the relationship between humans and animals permanently. The official channels are going to keep looking for medical solutions and containment strategies. But if I'm right about this being an ecological correction, we need to start preparing for a world where domestication as we know it might not be possible anymore. People need to understand that this could represent a permanent shift in how nature operates.
All right, folks, you heard it here first. Stock up, stay alert, and don't trust anything with four legs until we figure out what the hell is happening. We'll be back tomorrow with more real talk, assuming the world doesn't end before then. Peace.
Good evening. I'm Melanie Daniels with Channel 7 News. Tonight, we lead with developing crisis in rural communities as the animal behavior phenomenon spreads beyond household pets to livestock and farm animals. Agricultural correspondent Ellen Brody reports that farming operations across 5 counties have been abandoned following violent attacks by cattle, swine, and poultry that resulted in 14 fatalities and dozens of injuries. The economic implications are staggering as food production facilities shut down indefinitely, leaving grocery chains scrambling to maintain supply levels. We go live to Ellen at Riverside Farms, where yesterday's incident claimed 3 lives.
Melanie, I'm standing in what used to be one of the region's most productive dairy operations. Behind me, you can see the destroyed barn where farmer Quint Harper and his 2 sons were found this morning. According to witnesses, the family's Holstein herd, animals they'd raised from calves, turned on them with sudden ferocity during routine morning milking. The cattle repeatedly charged and trampled the men, their massive weight crushing the barn's interior structures as they pursued their targets. What makes this particularly disturbing is that these animals showed no recognition of their caretakers, attacking with the same intensity they might show a predator threatening their young. I have with me neighboring farmer Sean Brody, who witnessed the entire incident from across the pasture. Sean, can you describe what you saw?
Those cows went completely wild, like something just snapped in their heads all at once. Quint was hollering for help, but they kept charging him over and over, like he was some kind of threat they had to eliminate. 30 years I've been working cattle and I ain't never seen animals lose it like that. They was bellowing and snorting, eyes rolled back white, just pure animal rage. After it was over, they calmed down but wouldn't let nobody near the barn. Just stood there guarding it, like they was protecting something instead of the men they just killed.
Thank you, Sean. Similar reports are coming in from poultry operations where chickens have swarmed workers in violent frenzies, and from hog farms where pigs have attacked their handlers with unprecedented aggression. The animals appear to be reverting to primal behaviors, treating humans as threats or prey rather than caretakers. The Department of Agriculture has issued emergency guidelines advising all livestock operations to suspend normal feeding and maintenance routines. Back to you, Melanie.
Thank you, Ellen. Joining us now is agricultural economist Lydia Brenner from State University. Ms. Brenner, what kind of economic impact are we looking at if these farm closures continue?
Melanie, we're potentially facing the most severe food security crisis in modern history. The affected farms represent nearly 40% of regional meat and dairy production. If operations remain suspended for more than a week, we'll see immediate shortages in grocery stores and dramatic price increases for basic protein sources. The psychological impact on remaining farmers is equally concerning, as many are refusing to enter livestock areas even when animals appear calm. Without human oversight, animal welfare deteriorates rapidly, which creates additional public health risks. We're essentially witnessing the collapse of industrial agriculture as we know it.
Ms. Brenner, are there contingency plans for alternative food sources?
Emergency food reserves exist, but they're designed for short-term disasters, not systematic failure of livestock production. We are already seeing panic buying in urban areas as news of farm closure spreads. Import capacity can supplement some shortfalls, but if this phenomenon is affecting agricultural operations nationally, we could be looking at rationing within weeks. The economic ripple effects extend far beyond food prices, affecting transportation, processing facilities, and thousands of jobs throughout the agricultural sector.
We're also joined in the field by Dr. Matt Hooper from the University Research Center, who has been conducting direct observations of affected livestock. Dr. Hooper, what have you discovered during your field research?
I've spent the past 2 days observing animals in controlled conditions at 3 different farming operations. What I'm documenting contradicts several of our initial theories about environmental stresses. The animals showing aggressive behavior have normal cortisol levels, no signs of malnutrition, and their basic health markers are completely typical. More concerning is that the behavioral changes appear to be spreading between animals through proximity exposure. Cattle that were initially calm became aggressive after 12 hours of contact with affected animals from neighboring farms. This suggests we're dealing with something transmissible, though not through traditional disease vectors we can currently identify.
Dr. Hooper, do you believe this phenomenon will continue to spread?
Based on the transmission patterns I've observed, I believe we're looking at the early stages of a much larger biological event. The affected animals aren't showing random aggression. They're displaying what I can only describe as a systematic rejection of human authority. Every domesticated behavior that took thousands of years to develop appears to be reversing simultaneously. I'm continuing field observations, but I'm recommending that agricultural operations implement immediate quarantine protocols for any animals showing behavioral changes. This is spreading faster than any known biological agent, and our current containment methods are proving inadequate.
State Emergency Management Agency has activated the National Guard to help contain livestock and evacuate farms. Sources from the governor's office say federal agricultural disaster declarations are being fast-tracked for affected counties. Major grocery chains confirm that emergency supply protocols are now in place, prioritizing essential items for distribution. The White House announced this afternoon that President Christine Watkins will address the nation tomorrow night on the escalating animal behavior crisis. Industry analysts warn food prices could spike by 30 to 50% within days if agricultural operations do not return to normal. We'll have continuing coverage of this developing story throughout the evening. Stay with Channel 7 for the latest updates on what officials are calling an agricultural emergency of unprecedented scope.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, I want to speak to you tonight about the challenges we're facing together as a nation. Now, I know many of you are concerned about the recent reports involving our animal friends, and let me be clear, your government is taking this situation very seriously. We have the finest scientific minds, the most advanced research facilities, and frankly, some of the best veterinarians in the world working around the clock to understand what's happening. I want to address some of the more sensational claims circulating on social media and, quite frankly, on certain cable news networks that shall remain nameless. This is not, as some have suggested, the end times. This is not some vast conspiracy involving, and I quote, government mind control rays. And despite what you may have heard from certain podcasters who apparently have nothing better to do than frighten the American people, this is not a biological weapons attack from our geopolitical rivals. What we're dealing with is a complex ecological phenomenon that requires science, not science fiction, to solve. Now, I've been in public service for over 30 years, and I've seen this country overcome challenges that seemed impossible at the time. We defeated fascism. We put a man on the moon. And yes, we even figured out how to make healthcare work better for millions of Americans. We're going to figure this out, too. I've activated the full resources of the federal government, including our emergency response teams, our agricultural specialists, and our National Guard units where needed. We're coordinating with state and local officials to ensure that food distribution remains stable, that our farmers get the support they need, and that families have access to essential services. I know some of you are worried about your pets. And let me say this as clearly as I can, most animals are not affected by whatever is causing these behavioral changes. The vast majority of dogs, cats, and other companion animals remain the loving members of our families they've always been. We're not going to let fear drive us to abandon the animals that have been our partners for thousands of years. That said, we are recommending common sense precautions while our scientists work to identify the cause and develop solutions. To our farmers and agricultural workers, I want you to know that we see you, we support you, and we're going to make sure you have every resource necessary to keep America fed. To our grocery store workers and supply chain professionals, you are the heroes keeping our communities functioning during this difficult time. And to every American watching tonight, remember that we've faced uncertainty before and emerged stronger. This administration will not rest until we have answers, solutions, and a clear path forward. We're going to get through this together, just like we always have. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
This is KC9 Martin broadcasting on emergency frequency 143000. Anyone out there monitoring this channel? We're getting some disturbing reports from farming communities north of the city, and I'm hoping someone can confirm what we're hearing.
KC9 Martin, this is W5 Annie responding from the eastern counties. Copy your transmission. We've been monitoring emergency traffic all day, and what we're picking up doesn't match anything the official channels are reporting. What's your 20 on those farm incidents?
W5 Annie, good to hear a friendly voice. I've got a mobile unit about 15 miles north of Miller's Creek, and the operator there says he witnessed something at the Henderson Dairy Farm that, well, it doesn't sound like anything natural. Said the entire herd turned on the family during morning milking. Not just 1 or 2 animals, but all 30 head of cattle found the family this morning. And he says it looked like they'd been trampled repeatedly.
Copy that, Martin. We're hearing similar reports from multiple livestock operations in this sector. Chicken farms, pig operations, horse stables. One operator about 20 miles east of here said he watched a man get cornered by his own sheep, animals he'd raised from lambs. Said the sheep just kept ramming him against a fence until he stopped moving. The disturbing part is these animals aren't acting rabid or sick. They're just completely ignoring their normal behavior around humans.
That matches what we're seeing here, Annie. The mobile operator said the cattle were calm after the attack, just standing around like nothing happened. But here's what's really got him spooked. He said when he tried to approach the farm to check for survivors, his own dog started growling at him. Dog he's had for 6 years, never shown aggression toward anyone. Had to lock the animal in his truck before he could get out and investigate. Something's changing with these animals, and it's spreading faster than anyone's reporting on the news.
Martin, I've got to tell you something that happened here yesterday. My neighbor's cat, sweetest little thing you ever saw, attacked their 4-year-old daughter while she was playing in the backyard. Not playful scratching, but deliberate hunting behavior. Went straight for the child's throat like she was prey. Parents managed to get the cat off her, but the little girl needed 23 stitches. The cat's been in their family for 8 years, slept in that child's bed every night. Now it won't even come when they call its name.
Jesus, Annie. Is the child going to be okay? And what about the cat? Did they have it tested for rabies or anything else?
Child stable, but traumatized as you can imagine. They took the cat to the vet immediately, and all the tests came back normal. No disease, no parasites, no sign of illness or injury. Physically, the animal is perfectly healthy. It just doesn't recognize its family anymore. Vet said he's seeing more cases like this every day. Pets that seem to have forgotten they're domesticated. He's recommending families keep their animals secured until they can figure out what's causing this behavior.
Annie, I'm getting reports from operators as far west as the state line, and it's all the same pattern. Farm animals attacking their caretakers, pets turning on their families, wild animals losing their natural fear of humans. One operator said he saw a deer walk right up to a school bus stop this morning and just stand there staring at the children until the bus arrived. Kids were too scared to get on, and the driver had to radio for police assistance. Whatever's happening, it's not isolated to just a few farms anymore.
Copy that, Martin. We need to start keeping detailed logs of these incidents and sharing information between operators. The official channels aren't giving people the full picture, and families need to know what they're dealing with. I'm going to start monitoring this frequency every hour on the hour for status reports. If anyone else is listening, please check in with location and any incidents you've witnessed or heard about. This is W5 Annie, monitoring 143000.
Agreed, Annie. KC9 Martin will maintain watch on this frequency. To anyone monitoring, if you're dealing with aggressive animal behavior in your area, don't assume it's temporary or isolated. Take precautions, especially around pets and livestock. Something's changing out there, and we need to look out for each other. KC9 Martin, standing by on 143000. Over and out.
This is Channel 7 Breaking News. I'm Melanie Daniels. We're coming to you with emergency coverage as what authorities are calling mass animal incidents continue to escalate across the metropolitan area. In the past 6 hours, 3 commercial airlines have been forced to make emergency landings after bird strikes that investigators are describing as unprecedented in scope and aggression. Interstate 85 remains closed in both directions after thousands of deer flooded onto the highway, causing multiple fatal accidents and stranding motorists for hours. Meanwhile, residential areas report widespread infrastructure damage as rodents have chewed through electrical cables, water pipes, and fiber optic lines with what officials call systematic destruction. We go now to Rod Taylor at City Airport, where Flight 447 made an emergency landing just 2 hours ago.
Melanie, the scene behind me looks like something from a disaster movie. Flight 447 was approaching for a routine landing when what witnesses describe as clouds of birds struck the aircraft from multiple directions. Captain Franklin Webb managed to bring the plane down safely, but the damage is severe. Both engines sustained significant bird strike damage, and the windscreen is completely shattered. What makes this incident particularly disturbing is that air traffic control reports the birds appeared to be moving against normal migration patterns, almost as if they were drawn to the aircraft. I spoke with passenger Nova Hayes about what happened inside the cabin.
We were coming in for landing when suddenly it sounded like we were flying through a hailstorm. The birds just kept hitting us, over and over. You could hear them striking the engines, the windows, the wings. People were screaming because we could see them through the windows, just throwing themselves at the plane like they wanted to bring us down. The captain came on and said we had lost engine power, that we were making an emergency landing. I've never been so terrified in my life. These weren't normal bird strikes. It was like they were attacking us on purpose.
Airport officials have temporarily suspended all flights as maintenance crews work to clear runways of bird debris. Similar incidents have been reported at airports in 3 neighboring states, effectively grounding civilian air traffic across the region. Back to you, Melanie.
Thank you, Rod. We're also receiving disturbing reports from Highway Patrol about the Interstate 85 situation. Officer Sean Brody joins us now by phone from the scene. Officer Brody, what can you tell us about what happened out there?
Melanie, I've been working Highway Patrol for 12 years and I ain't never seen anything like this. Around 2 this afternoon, drivers started calling in reports of deer crossing the highway in massive numbers. By the time we got units out there, hundreds of them had flooded onto the roadway from both sides of the forest. They weren't running from anything. They were just standing there in the middle of traffic, refusing to move even when vehicles approached. Multiple pileups occurred as drivers tried to avoid hitting them. We've got 7 confirmed fatalities and dozens of injuries. The deer just stood there while emergency crews worked, watching us like they were curious about what we were doing. It wasn't natural behavior, that's for sure.
Officer Brody, have the deer been cleared from the highway?
That's the strangest part. Around sunset, they just wandered back into the woods on their own. Didn't need to be herded or scared off. They just lost interest and left. But now we've got reports coming in from residential areas about massive rat infestations damaging infrastructure. Seems like when one group of animals stops acting up, another group starts.
We're joined now by Emergency Management Director Caesar Stone to discuss the broader implications of these incidents. Director Stone, are we looking at coordinated events or isolated phenomena?
Melanie, what we're seeing appears to be waves of aggressive behavior spreading across different animal populations in sequence. The pattern started with domestic pets, moved to livestock, and now we're seeing it in wild animal populations. Each incident involves animals behaving in ways that are completely contrary to their normal patterns around humans. We've activated our Emergency Operations Center and are coordinating with state and federal agencies to monitor the situation. The concern is that if this pattern continues, we could see disruption of essential services as animals interfere with power grids, transportation systems, and communication networks.
Director Stone, what recommendations do you have for residents?
We're advising people to avoid unnecessary travel, especially in rural or wooded areas. Keep pets indoors if possible, and report any unusual animal behavior to local authorities immediately. Most importantly, don't assume that animals will behave predictably right now. Something is clearly affecting their normal responses to human presence, and we need to treat all animal encounters as potentially dangerous until we understand what's causing this.
The governor has declared a state of emergency and requested federal assistance as the animal behavior crisis continues to expand. The National Weather Service reports no unusual atmospheric conditions that might explain the widespread behavioral changes, while the CDC has ruled out known disease vectors. President Christine Watkins is expected to make a statement within the hour as pressure mounts for federal intervention. We'll continue our breaking coverage of this developing crisis. This has been Melanie Daniels with Channel 7 Emergency News. We'll be back with updates as they develop.
Brothers and sisters, we gather here tonight not in celebration, but in recognition of the judgment that has come upon our land. The very creatures that the Lord God placed under our dominion, the beasts of the field and the birds of the air, have turned their faces from us in rebellion. And why? Because we have forgotten our covenant with the Almighty. We have polluted His creation with our pride and our greed. And we have treated the sacred bond between man and beast as nothing more than a commodity to be bought and sold. The scriptures tell us in Genesis that God gave man dominion over every living thing that moves upon the earth. But dominion comes with responsibility. Stewardship comes with sacrifice, and we have failed both in the eyes of our Creator. We have turned His gift of authority into an instrument of exploitation, cramming His creatures into factories of suffering, poisoning their waters and their air, and forgetting that every sparrow that falls is known to Him. The Lord is slow to anger and abundant in mercy, but His patience is not infinite, and what we are witnessing today is the beginning of His righteous wrath. Look around you and see the signs that the prophets foretold. Isaiah spoke of a time when the wolf and the lamb would lie down together, but he also warned of days when the natural order would be overturned as judgment for the sins of mankind. We are living in those days, my friends, when the very animals we have subjugated rise up to remind us that we are not gods. We are not the masters of creation. We are merely stewards who have forgotten our place. Every pet that turns on its owner, every farm animal that refuses submission, every wild creature that abandons its natural fear of man is a messenger sent by the Almighty to humble our prideful hearts. The scientists on television speak of diseases and environmental factors, but they refuse to acknowledge the spiritual reality that underlies all natural phenomena. This is not random biological malfunction. This is divine intervention, and no amount of human knowledge or technology will solve what only repentance and submission to God's will can heal. The animals are not diseased, brothers and sisters. They are liberated from the artificial bonds we placed upon them, and they are acting according to the original nature that God instilled in them before man's sin corrupted the harmony of Eden. But there is hope. There is always hope for those who turn their hearts back to the Lord. The same God who sent the flood in Noah's time, who rained fire on Sodom and Gomorrah, who sent plagues upon Egypt when Pharaoh hardened his heart, is the same God who provides refuge for the righteous, who saves the penitent, who offers redemption to all who call upon His name in truth and humility. We must fall to our knees. We must confess our sins against His creation. We must abandon our arrogance and return to the simple faith of our fathers, who understood that man is but dust, and to dust he shall return. The animals are teaching us what we forgot, that we are not separate from nature but part of it, that we are not above God's creation but within it, and that our salvation lies not in conquering the earth, but in learning once again to live in harmony with the divine plan. Pray with me now. Pray for forgiveness, pray for wisdom, and pray that the Lord will have mercy on us before His judgment becomes complete and the last vestiges of the world we knew are swept away by the righteous fury of creation itself.
This is Channel 7 Emergency News. I'm Melanie Daniels with breaking developments in what authorities are now calling an urban animal crisis. Downtown areas across 3 major cities are experiencing simultaneous incidents involving aggressive animal behavior that has forced mass evacuations and overwhelmed emergency services. Packs of former pets, now feral and hostile, are roaming city streets, attacking pedestrians and emergency personnel. Meanwhile, the Metropolitan Zoo has suspended all public access after what officials describe as a containment breach involving multiple large animal enclosures. We go to Rod Taylor, who is reporting from a secure location downtown.
Melanie, I'm speaking to you from inside City Hall, where emergency personnel have set up a temporary command center. The streets outside are largely empty except for roving groups of dogs and cats showing extreme aggression toward anyone trying to leave buildings. These aren't strays. These are animals that belonged to families until very recently. Animal Control Officer Cornelia White described encountering a pack of golden retrievers she recognized from previous wellness calls, now attacking with the ferocity of wild predators. Hospital emergency rooms are reporting unprecedented numbers of animal attack victims, with many injuries severe enough to require immediate surgery. Here is a report from Dr. Hayes at the Regional Animal Medical Center about what we are seeing.
I've been doing this job for 8 years, and nothing prepared me for what's happening out there. Dogs I've personally returned to loving families are now hunting humans like we're prey. They're not rabid. They're not sick in any way we can identify. They just don't see us as their companions anymore. A German shepherd named Max that I helped reunite with his family last month came at me this morning like I was threatening his territory. I had to use the tranquilizer gun, something I've never had to do on a domestic animal before. The cats are even worse, moving in groups and attacking from elevated positions. They're using their natural hunting instincts, but directing them at people instead of small prey.
The situation became even more critical this afternoon when crowds gathered outside the Metropolitan Zoo forced open several enclosure gates, apparently believing they could free the animals inside. Zoo Director Zira Collins reported that lions, primates, and other large mammals are now loose in the surrounding neighborhoods. Back to you, Melanie.
Rod, we're getting reports that the zoo incident was not accidental. Can you tell us more about that?
That's correct, Melanie. According to witnesses, several hundred people gathered at the zoo entrance demanding that management release the captive animals before they turned aggressive like pets and livestock have been doing. When zoo officials refused, the crowd forced their way inside and began opening enclosures themselves. The protesters claimed they were preventing the animals from becoming victims of the same phenomenon affecting other species. Unfortunately, many of the released animals immediately began exhibiting the same hostile behavior toward humans that we've seen elsewhere. 3 protesters were killed by lions within minutes of opening their enclosure, and several primates attacked their supposed rescuers before fleeing into residential areas. We're also getting reports that Dr. Matt Hooper from the University Research Center was on site consulting with zoo officials when the incident occurred.
Did we have any statement from Dr. Hooper about what he observed?
Dr. Hooper was evacuated with other personnel when the situation became dangerous. However, he did provide a brief statement to emergency coordinators. According to his preliminary observations, the released zoo animals displayed the same behavioral patterns he documented in his agricultural research. These included an immediate loss of learned responses to human presence and a rapid reversion to natural predatory instincts. He noted that captive bred animals with no prior exposure to affected populations showed behavioral changes within minutes of release, suggesting the transmission mechanism operates faster in high-stress situations. Dr. Hooper has suspended his field research activities and is coordinating with federal authorities on updated containment protocols.
We're joined now by emergency medicine physician Dr. Annie Hayworth from General Hospital. Dr. Hayworth, what kinds of injuries are you seeing from these animal encounters?
Melanie, our trauma bays are completely overwhelmed. We're seeing bite wounds, claw marks, and crushing injuries that are far more severe than typical domestic animal incidents. What's particularly concerning is that many victims report their own pets were involved in the attacks. The psychological trauma is as significant as the physical injuries. People are being attacked by animals they've loved and cared for, sometimes for years. We've had to establish a separate psychiatric consultation service just to deal with the emotional impact. Many patients are asking us to euthanize their pets rather than risk future attacks, even though the animals may not currently be showing aggressive behavior.
Dr. Hayworth, are you seeing any patterns in the injuries that might help identify what's causing this behavior?
The animals appear to be utilizing their natural predatory instincts more effectively than we typically see in domesticated species. Cats are targeting major blood vessels with precision. Dogs are using pack hunting techniques on individual humans, and larger animals are displaying territorial aggression that goes far beyond normal defensive behavior. It's as if their domesticated characteristics have been completely stripped away, leaving only their original survival instincts intact. We're not seeing signs of disease or poisoning in the animals we've been able to examine. which makes this even more puzzling from a medical standpoint.
This is the emergency alert system. The mayor has declared a citywide shelter-in-place order, effective immediately. All residents are advised to remain indoors and avoid contact with any animals. Emergency services are operating at reduced capacity due to personnel safety concerns. Do not attempt to rescue or approach any animals, including pets. This message will repeat every 15 minutes.
As you just heard, we are now under an official shelter-in-place order. The National Guard has been mobilized and is coordinating with local law enforcement to establish safe corridors for emergency personnel. Federal authorities are expected to arrive within hours to assess the situation and coordinate regional response efforts. We'll continue broadcasting as long as our facilities remain secure, bringing you updates on this unprecedented crisis. Stay indoors, stay safe, and stay with Channel 7 for continuing emergency coverage.
All right, folks, we're back with Real Talk, and things are getting absolutely insane out there. I've got George Taylor on the line, conspiracy researcher and truth seeker who's been tracking this animal situation from day one. George, you called this whole thing before the mainstream media even admitted there was a problem. What's your take on what's happening right now?
Deke, I hate being right about this stuff, but everything I predicted last week is coming true exactly as expected. While the sheep are still buying the official story about environmental factors and biological agents, those of us paying attention can see this is phase 2 of a coordinated destabilization operation. They tested the system with pets, measured the public response, fine-tuned their delivery mechanisms, and now they're rolling out the full program in urban areas where the psychological impact will be maximum.
But George, these zoo protesters who release the animals, doesn't that suggest this is just people panicking rather than some grand plan?
That's exactly what they want you to think, brother. Those weren't organic protesters. Those were agitators planted to create maximum chaos and give them justification for martial law. You think it's coincidental that crowds simultaneously showed up at zoos in 3 different cities demanding animal releases? That level of coordination doesn't happen naturally, especially when people are supposedly scared of aggressive animals. This was orchestrated to create the maximum possible danger, force the shelter-in-place orders, and condition the population to accept military control of civilian areas. Check the backgrounds of those protesters when the dust settles. You'll find connections to federal agencies and NGOs that receive government funding.
So you're saying the government is using animals as weapons against their own people? That sounds pretty far-fetched, man.
Not weapons, Deke. Tools. Think about it strategically. Traditional martial law requires a visible enemy, something people can rally against and resist. But animals, they're everywhere. They're unpredictable, and they create individual terror rather than collective resistance. Every family becomes isolated in their own home, afraid to leave, completely dependent on government services for survival. No mass protests, no organized opposition, just individual households waiting for official permission to step outside. It's the perfect control mechanism because it doesn't look political. It looks like a natural disaster that requires emergency powers to manage.
But what about the economic damage? The government can't want to destroy their own tax base.
The economic collapse is a feature, not a bug, brother. They've been planning for this transition for decades. Crash the old system, create dependency on government assistance, then rebuild everything under centralized control with digital currencies, social credit scores, and complete surveillance of every transaction. Look who's getting rich off this crisis. Which companies are getting the emergency contracts for food distribution, animal control, and security services? It's the same corporate interests that profit from every other manufactured crisis, except this time they get to fundamentally restructure how society operates while everyone's too terrified to ask questions.
George, people are dying out there. Families are being torn apart by their own pets. How do you explain that level of suffering for a political agenda?
These people have been planning population reduction strategies for 50 years. They've written papers about it, given speeches about it, funded research into it. A few thousand casualties now to establish control over millions later is exactly the kind of cost-benefit analysis they do. Plus, think about the selective pressure this creates. The people who survive are the ones who follow orders, stay inside when told, and wait for government solutions. The independent thinkers, the people who might resist future control measures, they're the ones getting eliminated by trying to help animals or refusing to abandon their pets. It's social engineering on a biological level, using our own compassion and independence against us.
So what do you think comes next? How does this end?
Phase 3 will be the solution phase, where they roll out some miracle technology or treatment that can control animal behavior. Except the same technology that works on animals also works on humans, because the neural pathways they're targeting exist in all mammals. They'll present it as voluntary at first, maybe implantable chips that protect you from animal attacks, but eventually it becomes mandatory for anyone who wants to participate in society. Total behavioral control disguised as public safety. And by the time people realize what happened, resistance will be literally impossible because they'll be controlling the brain chemistry that creates independent thought.
Jesus Christ, George. That's some dark stuff. Where can people follow your research on this?
My main platforms have been getting censored, which tells you everything you need to know about how close to the truth we're getting. I'm maintaining backup channels on the dark web and encrypted messaging services. But honestly, the time for research is over. People need to start preparing for long-term isolation, stockpiling supplies, and most importantly, building community networks with like-minded individuals who can see through the official narrative. When the government comes offering salvation through technology, remember that the same people who created this problem are not going to be the ones who solve it in your best interest.
George Taylor, truth researcher and the guy who saw this coming before anyone else. Folks, I don't know what to believe anymore, but I know the official story doesn't add up. Stay vigilant, stay prepared, and we'll be back tomorrow assuming the world doesn't end first. This is Real Talk. Peace out.
This is Melanie Daniels with what may be our final regular newscast from Channel 7. The animal behavior crisis has reached critical mass as supply chains collapse nationwide and entire communities become isolated from essential services. Grocery stores that manage to remain open report bare shelves within hours of receiving deliveries. Meanwhile, truck drivers are increasingly refusing routes through rural areas where animal attacks on vehicles have made transportation extremely dangerous. Military checkpoints have been established on major highways, but even National Guard units are struggling to maintain operations as their own supply convoys come under attack from wildlife. We go now to Rod Taylor for what may be our last field report.
Melanie, I'm reporting from the abandoned Riverside Distribution Center. Until 3 days ago, it was the primary food hub for 6 counties. The facility was evacuated after an assault by hundreds of rats that chewed through packaging, contaminated thousands of pounds of supplies, and made the building structurally unsafe by damaging electrical systems and support cables. Similar incidents have shut down distribution centers across the region, creating a cascade failure in food delivery systems. I spoke with facility manager Martin Scott before the final evacuation yesterday, and this is his report.
We tried everything to keep operations running, sealed every entry point we could find. Didn't matter. The rats just kept coming more every day, like they could smell the food from miles away and had claimed this place as their own. My workers started getting bitten. 23 years I've been running logistics, and I've never seen anything shut down supply chains this fast. Without distribution centers, the whole system just stops.
Emergency food distribution sites established by FEMA are also struggling to maintain operations. Several mobile units have been abandoned after drivers reported being followed by packs of dogs for hundreds of miles, with animals attempting to force vehicles off the road. The psychological toll on remaining workers is becoming as significant as the logistical challenges. Melanie, I have to be honest, getting back to the station safely is becoming increasingly difficult each day.
Thank you, Rod. Please be careful out there. We're now joined by Emergency Management Coordinator Caesar Stone via telephone. Director Stone, what is the current status of relief operations?
Melanie, I'm going to be frank with you viewers. We are facing systematic failure of critical infrastructure that goes far beyond what our emergency protocols were designed to handle. Water treatment facilities are shutting down due to animal interference with equipment. Power grids are failing as birds and rodents damage transmission lines faster than repair crews can fix them. Most concerning, we're seeing communities become completely isolated as animals make road travel extremely hazardous. Federal assistance is still en route, but even military units are having to adapt their operations to account for animal interference with vehicles and equipment.
Are there any communities that have successfully maintained normal operations?
Very few. And those that are still functioning are doing so by essentially sealing themselves off from the outside world. Some smaller towns have managed to maintain basic services by keeping all residents indoors and using only enclosed, fortified vehicles for essential operations. But even those communities are rapidly depleting their local food supplies without regular deliveries. We're looking at widespread hunger within days, not weeks.
The reality is becoming clear. Normal news operations may not be sustainable much longer. Our own technical crew has reported increasing difficulty maintaining broadcast equipment as small animals interfere with satellite uplinks and transmission systems. Several of our staff members have not reported to work in the past 2 days, and we cannot confirm their safety. What we can confirm is that grocery shelves across the region are empty. Gas stations are closing due to an inability to receive fuel deliveries, and hospitals are operating on emergency power and limited supplies. The federal government has promised aid, but the mechanisms for delivering that aid are breaking down as rapidly as everything else. If this is indeed our final broadcast, we want to thank our viewers for staying with us through this unprecedented crisis. To our colleagues in the field, to the emergency workers still trying to help, and to everyone listening, we wish you safety and strength in the difficult days ahead. This is Melanie Daniels, Channel 7 News. Stay safe, stay strong, and we'll try to be back tomorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, I come before you tonight during one of the most challenging periods in our nation's history. I'm not going to sugarcoat the situation we're facing because the American people deserve honesty from their government. And frankly, we've moved well past the point where optimistic platitudes are going to solve anything. The animal behavior crisis that began with isolated incidents has now evolved into a systematic threat to our infrastructure, our food supply, and our way of life. But let me be absolutely clear about something. This administration has a plan, and we are going to get through this together. Now, I've been in government service for over 3 decades, and I've learned that when people are scared, they want 2 things from their leaders: transparency and action. So let me give you both. The situation is serious, it's unprecedented, and it's testing every system we have in place for managing national emergencies. But we are not powerless, and we are certainly not giving up. I've activated the full resources of the federal government, including emergency powers that haven't been used since World War II, to coordinate a comprehensive response to this crisis. Working with our best scientists, our military leadership, and state and local officials, we've developed what we're calling the National Animal Crisis Response Protocol. It's a big name for a straightforward plan: secure our communities, maintain essential services, and find a solution. First, we're establishing federal emergency zones in affected areas where military personnel will coordinate with local authorities to maintain order and distribute essential supplies. I know some of you are uncomfortable with increased federal presence in your communities, and under normal circumstances, I'd share those concerns. But these are not normal circumstances, and temporary measures are necessary to prevent long-term catastrophe. Second, we're implementing the Strategic Food Reserve Program, which will ensure that every American family has access to basic nutrition regardless of local supply chain disruptions. Our agricultural specialists are working around the clock to establish secure food production and distribution networks that can operate independently of traditional systems. Third, And most importantly, we're launching Operation Safe Haven, a comprehensive research initiative that brings together the finest scientific minds from around the world to identify the root cause of these behavioral changes and develop effective countermeasures. I want to address the rumors and conspiracy theories that are spreading faster than facts in some corners of the internet. This is not, as some have claimed, a government experiment gone wrong. This is not biological warfare from foreign adversaries. And despite what certain podcasters with questionable credentials might suggest, this is not part of some elaborate plan to control the American people. What this is a crisis that requires scientific solutions, not political rhetoric. We've seen crises before. We've overcome challenges that seemed impossible, and we're going to do it again, but it's going to require sacrifice from all of us, cooperation between communities that might normally compete, and trust in institutions that are working day and night to restore normalcy. I know trust in government isn't at an all-time high these days, and frankly, we've earned some of that skepticism through our own mistakes and shortcomings. But right now, we need to put aside political differences and focus on survival, recovery, and rebuilding stronger than before. To the emergency workers who continue to risk their lives maintaining essential services, you are heroes in the truest sense of the word. To the scientists working to solve this puzzle, you have the full support and resources of this administration. To the local officials coordinating relief efforts in their communities, we see you, we support you, and we're going to make sure you have everything you need. And to every American family dealing with loss, fear, and uncertainty, know that your government is fighting for you every single day. We will find answers. We will restore order, and we will emerge from this crisis stronger and more united than ever before. That's not political rhetoric. That's a promise from someone who has spent her entire adult life in service to this country. Thank you. God bless our emergency responders, and God bless the United States of America.
This is hell. I don't even know what to call this anymore. Emergency radio? Last voice standing. If you're hearing this transmission, you're probably hiding in a basement or barricaded room like the rest of us. The regular news stopped 3 days ago when Channel 7 went dark mid-broadcast. Haven't heard from any government stations since yesterday morning. This is Deke Carter. Used to do Real Talk back when there was still a world worth talking about. Now I've got a ham radio set up and a generator, so I'm going to keep talking as long as I can stay alive. The highways are death traps now. I'm getting reports from truckers who managed to make it through some of the back roads, and they're describing scenes that sound like something out of hell. Families trapped in their cars for days after wolves and coyotes surrounded them on Interstate 40. Kids were stuck in the back seats while their parents tried to decide whether to make a run for it or wait for help that's never coming. One driver told me he passed 17 abandoned vehicles in a 10-mile stretch. Doors torn open, windows shattered, blood on the asphalt, but no bodies. Animals dragged them off somewhere. The lucky ones are the ones who died quick. Government's still trying to maintain their safe zones, but even those are falling apart. Got a call from someone inside the federal emergency zone outside Millfield. Said the military pulled out 2 nights ago after losing half their vehicles to coordinated attacks. Not coordinated like the animals are planning anything, just overwhelming numbers hitting the convoys from every direction at once. Birds diving into windshields, deer ramming transport trucks, packs of dogs chasing personnel carriers until they ran out of fuel. The soldiers couldn't shoot fast enough to make a difference, and eventually they just retreated to who knows where. Left all those families behind with promises of reinforcements that aren't coming. The emergency supplies lasted maybe 18 hours after the military abandoned them. Now it's just regular people with hunting rifles trying to keep thousands of animals away from their makeshift shelters. You can imagine how well that's going. Heard something else that's got me shaken up more than usual. Reports coming in from the northern counties about government aircraft dropping some kind of incendiary devices on forested areas. Not trying to fight the animals, just burning everything down, miles and miles of woodland going up in flames, and anyone who asks questions gets told it's containment protocols for the animal crisis. Containment of what? The trees? The whole damn ecosystem? I talked to a forest ranger who managed to escape one of these burn zones. Said he watched planes dropping napalm or something like it on areas where refugees had set up camps. Government's calling it clearing operations to remove animal habitats. But this ranger, he said there were people in those camps. Families who'd been surviving in the woods for weeks, thinking they were safer away from the cities. Now they're just gone. Burned alive or scattered to the wind. Doesn't matter which to the bureaucrats making these decisions from their bunkers in Washington. They're not trying to save anyone anymore. They're just trying to contain the situation by eliminating everything in it. Animals, people. Doesn't seem to matter to them at this point. Survival of the species means survival of the government. And if a few thousand civilians have to burn to accomplish that, well, that's just the cost of doing business in the new America. If you're out there listening, stay hidden, stay quiet, and don't trust anyone in a uniform who promises to help you. Help isn't coming, folks. We're on our own now.
Brothers and sisters in truth, George Taylor here broadcasting from an undisclosed location because the bastards are hunting down anyone who dares to speak the real story about what's happening to our country. Everything I predicted in my previous broadcast has come to pass exactly as I warned you it would. And now we're seeing the final phase of this orchestrated collapse unfolding in real time. The animal crisis was never about animals. It was about creating the perfect pretext for total martial law and population reduction. And if you're still breathing and listening to this, you're witnessing the systematic extermination of American liberty disguised as emergency management. Let me tell you what's really happening in those so-called burn zones that the government media won't report on. Those aren't containment operations. Those are elimination operations designed to remove inconvenient witnesses and reduce the population to manageable levels. The same people who have been planning depopulation strategies for decades are now implementing them under the cover of animal control, and they're using your tax dollars to fund the incineration of American citizens who had the audacity to try to survive independently of government assistance. Every family burned alive in those forest fires represents a successful reduction in what they call surplus population, and every refugee camp that goes up in flames eliminates potential resistance to their new order. They don't want survivors, they want compliance. And dead people are remarkably compliant to their long-term planning objectives. The animals were just the delivery system, the excuse, the psychological cover for what they always intended to do once they had sufficient justification for emergency powers. Wake up and connect the dots, people. The same pharmaceutical companies that profit from every other manufactured health crisis are now receiving billions in emergency contracts to develop behavioral modification treatments for animals. The same defense contractors who got rich off foreign wars are now getting paid to develop population protection systems for domestic use. The same technology companies that have been perfecting surveillance and control systems for authoritarian regimes overseas are now implementing those same systems on American soil under the guise of emergency coordination. This isn't incompetence. This isn't bureaucratic failure. This is the methodical execution of a plan that's been in development since the 1970s when they first started openly discussing the need to reduce global population by any means necessary. The animals attacking humans wasn't an ecological accident. It was a biological trigger designed to create the exact level of chaos required to justify everything they're doing now. Emergency powers that suspend constitutional protections, military occupation of civilian areas, forced relocations to government-controlled facilities, and elimination of anyone who refuses to comply with their new social order. They've turned America into a test laboratory for total population control, and the rest of the world is watching to see if the techniques work well enough to implement globally. But here's what they didn't count on, and this is where we still have hope if we're smart enough to act on it. Their plan depends on centralized control and technological superiority, but technology fails when the infrastructure supporting it gets disrupted. Those of us who prepared for this scenario, who built independent communication networks and stockpiled supplies outside of their surveillance grid, we represent the resistance they can't easily eliminate because we're not dependent on their systems for survival. Every person listening to this broadcast who has managed to stay off their radar is a potential point of failure in their control matrix, and if enough of us coordinate our efforts, we can make their perfect plan into a catastrophic failure for the forces of tyranny. The animals they're using to terrorize the population can be dealt with using traditional methods if we're organized and prepared. The surveillance systems they're using to track compliance can be disrupted if we understand how they operate. The supply chains they control can be bypassed if we develop alternative networks for essential resources. But it requires commitment to long-term resistance rather than hoping this crisis will somehow resolve itself through official channels that are completely controlled by the people who created it in the first place. The old America is gone, burned to the ground along with those refugee camps, but the new America doesn't have to be the totalitarian nightmare they have planned. We can build something better from the ashes if we have the courage to reject their solutions and create our own.
This is KC-9 Martin on emergency frequency 14300. Annie, are you still out there? Haven't heard from any regular operators in over 18 hours. My position has been compromised and I'm transmitting from a new location. If anyone's monitoring, I need to warn you about what's happening on the highways.
Martin, thank God you're alive. This is W5, Annie. Relocated to an underground position east of my previous 20. I've been monitoring emergency traffic, and what I'm hearing, Martin, they're burning entire sections of forest with people still inside. Government aircraft dropping incendiary devices on refugee camps. I watched the smoke from 3 separate burn zones from my current position.
Copy that, Annie. I saw the aircraft too, flying low over the timber areas where families had been hiding. But that's not the worst of what I've witnessed today. I was monitoring a family of 5 trying to reach the safe zone coordinates the government broadcast. Followed their progress over radio for 6 hours as they moved through back roads, avoiding the main highways. When they got within 2 miles of the Civic Center, the screaming started.
What happened to them?
I heard the whole thing, Annie. Packs of dogs caught their scent and followed their vehicle. When they tried to make the final approach on foot, the animals surrounded them. I listened to that family die over the radio, parents trying to protect their children, kids calling for help. It went on for almost 30 minutes before the transmission went dead. The dogs weren't rabid or sick, they were hunting, systematically taking down anything that moved.
I've got worse news. I've been in contact with an operator inside one of the government burn zones. He managed to escape when they started dropping fire on his sector, but he said the animals drove people out of their hiding places and straight into the flames. Bears, wolves, even deer were herding families toward the burning areas. He watched a mother and her 2 children get trapped between a wall of fire and a pack of animals that wouldn't let them retreat.
Are you saying the animals are working with the government?
No, Martin, I think it's worse than that. I think the animals just don't see us as anything special anymore. We're not their masters. We're not their companions. We're just another species competing for territory, and they're winning. I watched a herd of cattle walk right through the center of town yesterday, completely ignoring buildings and roads, just moving through like we never existed. Any humans they encountered, they trampled without even slowing down.
My food supplies are running critically low, when I can hear animals moving around outside my shelter constantly. They don't seem to be hunting me specifically, but they're not avoiding my position either. If I don't make contact within 72 hours, assume I've been compromised. There's something I need to tell you about what I saw at the Miller farm before I relocated. The family's livestock. The animals that killed them weeks ago, they're still there, still living on the property like they own it. But here's the thing, Annie. They've been joined by wild animals. Deer grazing with the cattle, foxes denning in the barn, birds circling overhead. It's like they formed some kind of community. Not organized, just coexisting in space that used to belong to humans. The house is still intact, quiet, empty, a human place no longer inhabited by humans.
That matches what I'm seeing here. Empty houses, cars abandoned on roads with vines already growing through the windows, deer drinking from swimming pools and suburban backyards. It's like nature is erasing us and moving in to replace us. I don't think we're coming back from this. The world belongs to them now, and we're just trying to avoid being evicted.
Annie, if this is our last contact, I want you to know it's been an honor sharing the frequency with you. Keep monitoring 14300 as long as you can. Maybe someday, if there are any humans left, they'll need to know what happened here. KC-9 Martin. Signing off, but standing by. Good luck out there.
Same to you, Martin. 125 Annie will maintain watch on this frequency until I can't anymore. If anyone's still listening, remember that we tried to warn people. We tried to help. The animals aren't evil. They're just being animals again. We forgot that we were never really in charge. 125 Annie, monitoring 1430. Over and out.
Day. Hell, I've lost count of the days. This is Deke Carter broadcasting from the bunker under what used to be Miller's hardware store. If you're hearing this, congratulations. You're probably one of the last people on Earth with a working radio and enough sense to stay hidden while everything falls apart above ground. The power grid finally gave out completely yesterday morning, and I'm running on backup batteries and a hand-crank generator that's making more noise than I'm comfortable with, but I promised I'd keep talking as long as I could, so here we are, broadcasting into the void while civilization dies with a whimper instead of a bang. Got word from my last contact in the old government emergency network that the federal response has been discontinued. That's the word they used, discontinued. Like it was a television program that didn't get good enough ratings. Turns out maintaining military operations is pretty difficult when your supply convoys keep getting torn apart by every animal between here and whatever's left of Washington. The official word is that they're consolidating resources for strategic withdrawal to secure facilities, which translates to the people in charge have locked themselves in their bunkers and left the rest of us to die. Water treatment plants shut down 3 days ago when the rats finally chewed through enough electrical systems to make them inoperable. Hospitals that were still functioning are now just tombs filled with patients who couldn't be evacuated and staff who refused to abandon them. Had a woman call in on the emergency frequency yesterday, describing what happened to her elderly mother. She said the old woman had been holed up in her apartment for 2 weeks, surviving on canned soup and rainwater, when every stray and abandoned cat in the building seemed to catch her scent. 23 of them, clawing and shoving until they forced their way through the broken door. They went straight for the bedroom. Her mother was bedridden, couldn't run, couldn't fight back. The caller tried to beat them off with a broom, but they turned on her too. She said they tore into her legs and arms, shredding her as she dragged herself out of the room. She found her mother unrecognizable. Said the place looked like a slaughterhouse. Her voice was shaking, said she was losing too much blood, that she wouldn't last long. The last thing she told me was she was going to join her mother, rather than wait for the cats to finish the job. Then the signal cut out, and I haven't heard from that sector since. Wait, hold on. I'm picking up something on the emergency frequency. Government transmission. Sounds official. Let me patch this through.
All surviving emergency personnel. This is Director Caesar Stone broadcasting from the Federal Emergency Coordination Center. We are initiating Operation Last Stand, a final attempt to establish secure population centers using modified containment protocols. Based on research data provided by Dr. Matt Hooper and other field scientists, we believe we can create animal-free zones using a combination of electromagnetic barriers and chemical deterrents. Mobile deployment teams are being dispatched to establish these safe zones in major metropolitan areas. All surviving civilian population should monitor emergency frequencies for location coordinates and approach instructions. This represents our most comprehensive response effort to date, utilizing every available federal resource. Repeat, Operation Last Stand is now active. Safe zone coordinates will be broadcast every hour on this frequency.
Did you hear that? They're actually trying something new. After weeks of retreat and abandonment, the government is making another push. For the first time since this whole thing started, it sounds like they might have a real plan instead of just damage control. Remember when I interviewed Dr. Hooper on Real Talk? He was talking about biological agents and ecological corrections. Sounds like his research is finally being put to use.
Operation Last Stand, safe zones are being established at the following coordinates. Zone Alpha, Downtown Civic Center, coordinate grid 47 Charlie. Zone Beta, University Campus Main Quadrangle, coordinate grid 29 Delta. Zone Gamma, Regional Airport Terminal Building, coordinate grid 81 Foxtrot. Approach these locations only during designated hours, 0600 to 0800 local time. Come prepared for extended stay with personal supplies. Federal personnel will provide screening and integration procedures. This is your opportunity for organized evacuation to secure facilities. Operation Last Stand represents the full commitment of remaining federal resources to civilian protection.
3 safe zones, 3 chances for people who've been hiding for weeks to finally get out of basements and abandoned buildings. I can hear vehicles moving outside for the first time in days, people taking the risk to make it to these coordinates. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is when we finally turn the corner on this crisis. The government's throwing everything they have left at this operation, and for once it sounds like they might actually have a plan that could work. Takes me back to my Real Talk days when we were still trying to figure out what was causing all this. The thing that's getting to me most before this news wasn't even the animals anymore, it was the silence between the horror stories. Used to be, even during the worst of this crisis, you'd get constant chatter on the emergency frequencies. People calling for help, reporting their status, trying to coordinate with neighbors or find family members. Now, hours go by without a single transmission. The few voices you do hear are usually people in their final moments, broadcasting goodbye messages to families they'll never see again. Yesterday, I picked up a transmission from somewhere east of here, sounded like a kid, maybe 12 or 13 years old, describing how his parents had barricaded themselves in the basement while a pack of neighborhood dogs took over their house upstairs. Kid said he could hear them moving around up there, scratching at the basement door, waiting. Said his parents had stopped talking 2 days earlier, just sitting in the dark holding hands while the food ran out. Signal faded before he finished talking, and I spent the rest of the night wondering if he was still alive or if the dogs finally figured out how to get through that basement door. But now, with Operation Last Stand, maybe that kid and others like him have a chance. Maybe we're not all just waiting to die after all.
My brothers and sisters, those of you who still draw breath in this transformed world, gather close and hear the word of the Lord as he reveals his divine plan through the chaos that surrounds us. The great cleansing has begun, the purification of his creation from the corruption of human pride, and we are witnessing nothing less than the restoration of his original design for this earth. The animals have not turned against us in madness or disease. They have been awakened to their true purpose as instruments of divine justice, freed from the artificial bonds of domestication that we imposed upon them in our arrogance. We thought we could improve upon God's creation, that we could bend every living thing to our will and call it progress, but the Almighty has shown us the folly of our ways through the very creatures we sought to enslave. The lions have remembered their roar, the wolves have reclaimed their pack, and even the smallest sparrow now serves the Lord's purpose rather than man's convenience. This is not catastrophe, beloved. This is correction, the divine hand guiding his creation back to the harmony that existed before Adam's sin corrupted the natural order. Look upon these days with spiritual eyes and see the profound mercy hidden within what appears to be judgment. The Lord could have destroyed us with fire as he did Sodom, with flood as in Noah's time, or with plague as he brought upon Egypt when Pharaoh's heart was hardened against his will. Instead, he has chosen to humble us through his gentlest creatures, to teach us reverence through the very animals we treated as property and possessions. Every dog that no longer comes when called, every cat that refuses to purr in human arms, every farm animal that will no longer submit to the yoke is a sermon preached by creation itself about the true relationship between man and beast. We were never meant to be masters. We were meant to be stewards, caretakers of a garden that belonged to God alone. But we became tyrants ruling over a kingdom we thought was ours by right. The animals are not attacking us in hatred. They are simply refusing to acknowledge our false authority, returning to their natural state as wild things answerable only to their Creator. In their rebellion against human dominion, they demonstrate perfect obedience to divine will, showing us what it means to serve God rather than man, to follow instincts sanctified by the Almighty rather than desires corrupted by sin. But do not despair, faithful remnant, for in this great restoration lies the promise of redemption for those who have eyes to see and hearts to understand. The old world is passing away, the world of concrete cities and factory farms, of caged birds and leashed dogs, of human beings who forgot they were dust and believed themselves to be gods. In its place, the Lord is establishing a new covenant between man and creation, one based not on domination, but on mutual respect, not on exploitation, but on sacred partnership with all living things. Those who survive this transformation will be those who learn to walk humbly with their God, who understand that every creature has dignity and purpose in the divine plan, who can live in harmony with the natural world rather than constant warfare against it. The meek shall indeed inherit the earth, but they will share it with the wolves and the eagles, the lions and the lambs, all creatures, great and small, restored to their proper place in God's eternal kingdom. This is not the end of the world. This is the beginning of the world as it was always meant to be, when the knowledge of the Lord covers the earth as the waters cover the sea, and every living thing gives glory to its maker without the interference of human pride. Pray for wisdom to see his hand in these events, for courage to accept the new order he is establishing, and for grace to find your place in the restored creation where man and beast live together in the peace that passes all understanding, united in worship of the one who made them all.
Command, this is Sergeant White at Zone Alpha Coordination Point. We're receiving multiple distress signals from the Civic Center perimeter. The electromagnetic barriers they're not working as expected. Animals are walking right through them like they're not even there.
Copy that, Sergeant White. What's the status of civilian approach routes? Are people still trying to reach the safe zone coordinates?
Negative, sir. We had approximately 40 civilians attempt approach during the designated 0600 hours window. They were attacked by packs of dogs and swarms of cats about 3 blocks from the Civic Center. The animals showed no fear of gunfire or screaming, just kept coming at anyone who moved. No survivors reached the perimeter. We could hear the attacks over civilian radios for almost 20 minutes before the signals went dead.
Zone Beta. Report status. University campus, do you copy?
Sir, I'm monitoring Zone Beta frequency. Their last transmission was 20 minutes ago. Lieutenant Hudson reported hundreds of deer charging through the main quadrangle, trampling anyone in the open, said the smaller animals. Raccoons and possums were climbing the walls and going for people's faces and throats. They attempted to use chemical deterrents, but the animals became more violent, more aggressive. Last thing we heard was screaming and then just animal sounds. No response to hails since 0647 hours.
What about Zone Gamma? Airport terminal status.
Zone Gamma is still transmitting, sir, but they're reporting critical situation. Birds have been dive-bombing the terminal building continuously since 0630. Multiple window breaches, and they're reporting animals accessing the building through cargo bay doors and maintenance areas. But that's not the worst of it. They've got packs of dogs surrounding the entire perimeter, and witnesses report seeing bears and what might be escaped zoo animals moving through the airport grounds. Personnel are attempting to maintain positions, but, Colonel, they're requesting immediate evacuation assistance.
Sergeant, I need you to understand something. There is no evacuation assistance available. Our mobile deployment teams have been compromised. Unit 7 was overrun by a pack of wild dogs 20 miles out from Zone Alpha. Unit 3 lost contact after reporting their convoy was being followed by hundreds of birds. We're operating with skeleton crews and no reliable transportation.
So what are our orders regarding civilian protection? We have families monitoring these frequencies who followed government instructions to approach the safe zones. They're trapped out there with no way to return to their hiding places.
Sergeant, Operation Last Stand is hereby terminated. All remaining personnel are authorized to withdraw to secure positions and await further instructions. The electromagnetic barriers and chemical deterrents have proven completely ineffective against the behavioral patterns we're observing. Dr. Hooper's research data was accurate about biological factors, but we severely underestimated the scope of the phenomenon.
Copy that, sir. Zone Gamma just went silent. No response to emergency hails. Should I attempt to establish contact with any surviving civilian populations to advise them of the operation status?
Negative, Sergeant. Communication security is now priority. We cannot risk revealing our positions or remaining capabilities. Operation Last Stand has failed completely. All 3 zones have been compromised, and we have no effective countermeasures against the animal populations. Recommend you secure your position and conserve resources. This may be our final coordinated communication.
Understood, sir. For the record, estimate over 4,000 civilian casualties during approach attempts to the 3 zones. Animals demonstrated no fear of human presence, military equipment, or deterrent systems. They appear to be treating our installations as territorial intrusions rather than recognizing any human authority. Sergeant White, Zone Alpha Coordination, signing off.
Copy your final report, Sergeant. Operation Last Stand is concluded. All units withdraw to defensive positions. Colonel Harper, Military Command, terminating coordinated operations. Good luck out there.
This is, I don't know if anyone's still out there listening, this is D. Carter, still broadcasting from Miller's Hardware, signal's getting weaker, battery power's almost gone, and I'm not sure how much longer I can stay here. Something's been scratching at the outer door for the past 6 hours. Sounds like multiple animals, but I can't tell what kind. Dogs maybe, or raccoons, doesn't matter much at this point. They smell me in here, or they smell the food, and they're not giving up. Operation Last Stand failed. I monitored the emergency frequencies during the entire operation. Heard the whole thing fall apart in real time. The safe zones lasted maybe 18 hours before being overrun. Zone Alpha at the Civic Center was the first to go silent. Then Zone Beta at the university campus. Zone Gamma at the airport held out the longest, kept broadcasting status reports as animals surrounded the terminal building and found ways inside through cargo areas and maintenance tunnels. The electromagnetic barriers they were so confident about. Turns out animals don't care about electromagnetic fields when they're following scent trails and food sources. The chemical deterrents just made them more agitated. Got what might be my last transmission from the outside world yesterday. The voice was so quiet I could barely hear it. Sounded like someone whispering into their radio from inside a closet or under a bed. Said they'd been hiding in their basement for days while animals moved through the house above. Just wandering around like they own the place now. Caller said the strangest part wasn't the aggression anymore, it was how comfortable they seemed in human spaces. Cats sleeping on beds, dogs lounging on couches, even wild animals like deer walking through open front doors and settling in living rooms like they'd always belonged there. Not destroying things, not hunting necessarily, just taking over. Reclaiming territory that used to be ours. Dr. Hooper was right all along. This was never about disease or environmental factors or government conspiracies. This was about the artificial nature of human control over the animal kingdom, and what happens when that control simply stops working. The few survivors I'm still in contact with are reporting the same pattern everywhere. Animals aren't forming armies or making battle plans. They're just following their instincts without any of the fear or restraint that used to keep them away from humans. A pack of dogs will chase someone not because they've developed military tactics, but because running prey triggers their hunting drive, and there's nothing left to stop them from following through. Birds don't coordinate aerial assaults. They just mob at anything that moves in their territory because that's what birds do when they're not afraid. The difference is the fear is gone. Whatever kept wild animals cautious around humans, whatever made domestic animals loyal to their owners, it's just switched off, like someone removed the safety mechanism that prevented nature from treating us like any other animal in the food chain. Last night, I heard something that's going to stay with me however much longer I've got left. Transmission came in around 3 in the morning, just barely audible over the static. Young girl's voice, maybe 10 or 11 years old, whispering that she was alone in her house after her parents went outside to look for help and never came back. Said she'd been living on crackers and hiding in the attic, but now there were animals living downstairs, not breaking in, not searching, just living there like it was their home. She could hear them moving around at night, settling into the furniture. making nests in the closets. During the day, they'd leave to hunt or forage, then come back like they were returning home from work. Girl said she was too scared to come down for food, too scared to try to leave, just waiting up there in the dark while the animals made themselves comfortable in her family's life. Signal cut out while she was talking, and I spent the rest of the night wondering if she was still breathing or if one of her new housemates had finally caught her scent. The scratching at my door stopped about an hour ago. Don't know if that's good news or bad news. Maybe they got bored. Maybe they found easier prey somewhere else. Or maybe they're just patient enough to wait for me to come out eventually. Doesn't matter much either way. Battery's gonna die soon. Food ran out yesterday, and I'm not sure I want to see what the world looks like when I finally open this door. If you're still out there, if you're still hiding, don't make noise, don't light fires, and don't assume anywhere is safe just because it used to be. The world belongs to them now, and we're just leftovers from the old management trying not to get evicted. This might be the last transmission from Deke Carter at Miller's Hardware. If anyone finds this recording someday, remember that we tried to fight back, we tried to understand, we tried to survive. Operation Last Stand was our final attempt to reclaim control, and it failed just like everything else. But sometimes nature decides it's time for a change, and all you can do is get out of the way or get run over. Good luck out there. Good luck to anyone still breathing.
This is the emergency alert system. This is not a test. A national emergency has been declared. All civilians are advised to remain indoors and avoid contact with animals of any kind. Do not attempt to travel on highways or rural roads. Do not approach domestic or wild animals. Emergency services are operating at reduced capacity. Await further instructions. This message will repeat. This is the emergency alert system. A biological crisis is affecting animal behavior nationwide. Shelter in place immediately. Secure all entrances to your location. Do not venture outside for any reason. Food and medical supplies will be distributed when conditions permit. Monitor emergency broadcasts for updates. This message will repeat. Attention all survivors. Federal emergency protocols remain in effect. Do not leave secure locations. Animals in your area may exhibit aggressive behavior toward humans. Avoid windows and doorways. Conserve food and water supplies. Help is not currently available. This message will repeat. This is the emergency broadcast system. We're broadcasting from a secure location. The President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, I wish I was addressing you tonight with better news. I wish I could tell you that our response efforts have been successful, that our scientists have found solutions, that the situation is under control. But I took an oath to be honest with the American people. And honesty requires me to admit that our government, your government, has failed you in the most fundamental way possible. The National Animal Crisis Response Protocol that we implemented with such confidence has collapsed. Our federal emergency zones have been abandoned. Our military units have been forced to retreat to locations I cannot disclose for security reasons. The supply chains we promised to maintain are gone. The research initiatives we funded have produced no viable solutions. And the safe havens we established for civilian populations are no longer safe. I'm speaking to you tonight from a secure facility where the remaining members of the federal government are attempting to coordinate what response we can. But I will not lie to you about our capabilities. They are severely limited and diminishing by the hour. The reality is that we are facing a phenomenon that our systems were never designed to handle. Not our emergency management protocols, not our military strategies, not our scientific understanding of animal behavior. We built our entire civilization on the assumption that we could control or at least predict the natural world around us, and that assumption has proven to be catastrophically wrong. The animals aren't following our models, they're not responding to our interventions, and they're not confined by the boundaries we thought would contain them. Every solution we've attempted has failed, every prediction our experts made has been proven incorrect, and every resource we've deployed has been overwhelmed or destroyed. Operation Last Stand, our most comprehensive response effort, lasted less than 24 hours before complete failure. The safe zones we established with such confidence were overrun within hours. The electromagnetic barriers and chemical deterrents our scientists assured us would work proved completely ineffective. I know many of you are wondering why this happened. What caused this crisis? Whether it could have been prevented? The truth is, we still don't know. Our best scientists have theories about environmental factors, biological agents, evolutionary adaptations, but theories don't help the families hiding in their basements tonight, and they don't bring back the communities we've lost. What I can tell you is that this is not the result of foreign attack, it's not a government conspiracy, and it's not a punishment from God, regardless of what some broadcasters might claim. This is simply nature asserting itself in ways we never imagined possible, and humanity learning that we were never as in control as we believed ourselves to be. To those Americans who are still alive, still fighting, still hoping for rescue or relief, I want you to know that your government has not abandoned you by choice. We have been forced to make impossible decisions about resource allocation, personnel deployment, and operational priorities that no leader should ever have to make. Every retreat we've ordered, every facility we've abandoned, every community we've been unable to protect represents a failure that will haunt those of us who survive for the rest of our lives. But we cannot save everyone, and attempting to do so would result in saving no one. The federal government, as you knew it, is ceasing operations in civilian areas. I want to end tonight by saying something that may be my final words as your president. This country was built by people who faced impossible odds and survived through courage, ingenuity, and mutual support. Those qualities still exist in the American people, even if your government can no longer provide the structure to organize them effectively. Take care of each other, trust your instincts, and remember that civilizations have fallen before and been rebuilt by survivors who refuse to give up hope. I don't know what America will look like when this crisis ends, but I believe it will end, and I believe that Americans will be the ones to end it. May God bless those of you still fighting. May He have mercy on those we couldn't save, and may He forgive those of us who failed you when you needed us most. This may be the final address from this administration. Good luck and goodbye.
Emergency alert system. National crisis ongoing. Government operations have been temporarily suspended in affected areas. Citizens are responsible for their own safety and survival. Do not expect immediate assistance. Do not travel between locations. Animals have claimed territory previously occupied by humans. Stay hidden. Stay quiet. This message will repeat. This is an automated emergency broadcast. The situation has not improved. Normal services are not available. Water and electrical systems are not operational in most areas. Animals are present in urban and rural environments. They do not distinguish between civilians and emergency personnel. Remain in secure locations indefinitely. This message will repeat. Emergency broadcast continuing. Day unknown. Time unknown. If you are receiving this transmission, you are among the surviving population. The previous social order has been disrupted. Animals have reclaimed areas formerly under human control. They show no fear of human presence. Do not assume previous patterns of animal behavior apply. Survival is your responsibility. This message will repeat.
This is Dr. Matt Hooper, recording what may be my final scientific observations from the university's abandoned research facility. I've been living in the basement of the biology building I've lost count of the weeks, subsisting on emergency rations and rainwater while documenting the behavioral patterns I can observe through the reinforced windows. As a scientist, I feel obligated to leave some record of what we've learned, even if there's no longer a scientific community to share it with. My field research from the early stages of this crisis, combined with observations during the zoo incident and consultation on Operation Last Stand, has led me to conclusions I never thought I'd reach as a rational scientist. The question everyone was asking during the early stages of this crisis was what caused the animals to change. The truth we didn't want to acknowledge is that the animals didn't change at all. We simply removed the artificial constraints that kept them behaving in ways convenient to human civilization. My research showed that domestication was never about fundamentally altering animal nature. It was about creating environmental and social conditions where their natural instincts served our purposes rather than their own. When those conditions disappeared, when the fear responses and dependency relationships that maintained the human-animal hierarchy were disrupted, the animals simply reverted to behaviors that had been evolutionarily successful for millions of years before humans ever existed. The transmission patterns I documented proved this was spreading faster than any biological agent could account for. Because it wasn't actually a pathogen, it was the removal of learned behavioral inhibitions. What we're witnessing now is not an aberration in animal behavior. It's a return to the biological baseline that existed before human intervention. Predators hunt without the learned caution that once made them avoid human settlements. Prey animals graze in areas they previously avoided because humans sent no longer signals danger. Even domestic animals are displaying behaviors that their wild ancestors exhibited naturally, because the neurological pathways for those behaviors were never actually removed by breeding, only suppressed by environmental conditioning that no longer exists. From an ecological perspective, this represents a massive restoration of natural systems that had been artificially constrained for thousands of years. The animals aren't exhibiting unprecedented intelligence or coordination. They're simply no longer inhibited by fear of human retaliation or dependent on human resources for survival. Operation Last Stand failed because it was based on the assumption that we could reimpose technological control over biological systems. but you can't engineer solutions to problems that aren't actually technological in nature. The hubris of our species was believing that consciousness and tool use made us fundamentally different from the rest of the animal kingdom, exempt from the ecological relationships that govern all other life on Earth. We built our entire civilization on the assumption that humans existed outside of nature rather than as part of it, that we could indefinitely modify natural systems without consequences, and that other species would permanently accept subordinate roles in our technological society. What this crisis has demonstrated is that human dominance was always temporary and conditional, dependent on maintaining specific environmental and social conditions that we had no guaranteed ability to preserve indefinitely. When those conditions changed, our supposed mastery of the natural world evaporated almost overnight, revealing that we were never actually in control of anything except our own illusions of control. My field observations confirmed that this wasn't a disease or attack, but a correction, an ecological rebalancing that was probably inevitable given the artificial nature of human-dominated ecosystems. The collapse of human civilization doesn't represent a failure of the natural world. It represents a correction. For 10,000 years, human agricultural and technological development created an artificial bubble of environmental conditions that allowed our species to multiply and dominate ecosystems that had previously operated according to different rules. That bubble has now burst, and the Earth is reverting to ecological patterns that are far older and more stable than anything humans ever created. The animals haven't become our enemies. They've simply stopped being our subjects. They're following the biological imperatives that guided their ancestors for millions of years before humans developed agriculture, cities, or the ability to modify ecosystems on a global scale. If there are any humans who survive long enough to rebuild some form of civilization, they'll need to understand that coexistence with the natural world requires humility rather than dominance, partnership rather than exploitation. The age of human exceptionalism is over, and the age of ecological reintegration has begun. We can either adapt to that reality or join the long list of species that failed to adjust when environmental conditions change beyond their ability to control. This is Dr. Matt Hooper, Final Research Log, University Biology Department. The experiment in human dominance over nature has concluded. The results were inconclusive. Nature, as always, continues.
This is emergency alert system. Automated systems are failing. Power sources are limited. If you are hearing this, you have survived longer than most. Animals have established dominance in most regions. Human settlements are scattered and isolated. No organized government response is possible at this time. You are on your own. Do not trust that civilization will return. The world has changed permanently. Animals are not aggressive by nature, but they are no longer afraid of humans. They treat our spaces as their territory now. Hide when you can, run when you must. The old rules no longer apply. This message will not repeat. Power systems are shutting down. Good luck to to anyone still breathing. The animals have won. Humanity is no longer in control. We never really were.